How does weight loss surgery work? Well, if you want to understand how restrictive weight loss surgery works, you need to first understand how normal anatomy works. And that's what the first slide is that we have. This is normal anatomy, and some of these things hopefully are familiar to you. That obviously is this nice lady's mouth. Mouth is connected by this thing, the esophagus, to the stomach, which is down here. All right? Most people can pick the shape of the stomach out of a lineup, I guess. So that's the stomach. And the esophagus, by the way, it's just a muscular tube that has one job in its life, which is to push stuff that you decide to swallow from your mouth down there to that stomach. So, there's your stomach. In the average adult human being, it turns out the stomach is pretty big, right? You can read on the internet in various places that the stomach is fist-sized, but that's not actually the case, right? The average adult human stomach holds somewhere between about a quart and a half. And everyone here knows what a quart of milk looks like, right? You've seen one at Wegmans or whatever, 7-Eleven. You know, a quart of milk is about that big. So if that's a quart, then the average human stomach is just a little bit bigger than that quart. It's about that big. So the average human being that has that average size stomach, they usually find that they can fit a pretty substantial amount of food into it if they try to. Usually at least something like the better part of a medium pizza, or maybe the better part of a large pizza, depending on who you are. In any case, when that individual does put that pizza into their stomach, for the stomach to accommodate that last little crust that brings it up to its full capacity, your stomach ends up having to stretch a little bit, like a balloon. Your stomach is sort of elastic, so it has to stretch to fit in that last bit of food. When your stomach does stretch in that way, it develops a little bit of tension in its walls, right? Now, all human beings have some special nerves in the walls of their stomachs that have the job of detecting that tension or that stretch. And what those nerves do in response to it is they transmit a signal to your brain. Specifically, that special nerve signal goes to that part of your brain that has the job of feeling satisfaction from food. It's that nerve signal that your brain is getting in response to stretch of the stomach from that food, which is what gives you that feeling of fullness that you're used to getting after you eat. In the case of this pizza, it's the continuous action of that nerve signal working on your brain over that 25 minutes that it takes you to finish that pizza. That's what ultimately makes you go, whew. You push the pizza box away, promise you're never going to have that much pizza at one sitting again. No one's paying attention, you might undo your top button, make a little more room, and then you go plop down on the couch over there for an hour. That sequence, right? You know, fill stomach with food, nerve signal goes on, you know, activates the brain to make you go, whew, gives you that full feeling. That's called the satiety reflex. And that satiety reflex is what all of the restrictive operations use to help you lose weight. So, starting the explanation with the gastric bypass. What we do for you with the gastric bypass is, very simply, we make you a new stomach out of the top of the old stomach. This little critter right here is the new stomach. This piece, right? And we call that new stomach the pouch. And the pouch is the key to the bypass operation. It's the most important part. And by the way, you get a pouch with every kind of restrictive bariatric surgery. Band, bypass, and sleeve. The pouch is how they work. Excuse me. Now, this little pouch that you get with a gastric bypass is obviously a whole lot smaller than the stomach over here that it was created out of. It's just a tiny little piece of that stomach. You're not going to fit a whole pizza anymore into that pouch after you get a bypass. The pouch, in fact, is not even going to fit a whole piece of pizza. It's going to fit like 3 or 4 bites. But when you put those 3 or 4 bites in that little pouch, it fills up and it stretches. And it turns out that most of the special nerves that we human beings have in our stomachs that have that special job of detecting stomach stretch, those nerves are all concentrated in that piece of stomach right at the very top, the piece out of which we make your pouch, right? All the nerves are in there. So now when those 3 or 4 bites of food come down, fill that pouch up, and distend it, right? Those nerves, the special nerve endings, are there to sense that. From the point of view of those special fullness sensing nerves in your stomach, after you get a gastric bypass and you eat a little bit of pizza, those nerves have no way to understand or perceive or detect that the rest of the stomach over there is no longer connected and it's not involved in this full feeling. The nerves can't tell that. They just sense a full stomach. And so they do what they used to do when they sense a full stomach. They send that full stomach signal to your brain. So about 25 minutes after you eat those couple bites of pizza, your brain experiences that same old whole pizza feeling. You go, whew, push the pizza box away. You promise you're never going to have that much pizza at one sitting again. No one's looking. You might undo your stop button. And then you're going to go plop down on the couch over there for an hour again. And you're going to be sitting over there feeling for all the world like you just ate another whole pizza, right? You're going to be patting your stomach going. This time, though, if you get up and come over and inspect the pizza box, you're going to see that it's not an empty pizza box. This time, there's just a couple bites missing out on one piece. So what you've done here, essentially, if you think about it, is you use this little pouch to trick your brain into thinking that you had this very large meal when what you really had is a tiny little meal. And that's how it works. It's really not very complicated at all. You're using the pouch to trick your brain into thinking that you had much more food than you really did, so that you just end up choosing to eat less. The idea is to take advantage of this effect 3 times a day, every day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At each of those meal times, what you want to do is put the right small amount of food into that pouch the right way. If you're good at it, you go through your day feeling like every time you're sitting down to eat, you're eating what seems to you like a Thanksgiving dinner-sized portion. You get up going, whew. But if you add up what you actually took in at the end of that day, of walking around feeling so full, it's not going to be much food at all, right? If you're a skilled bariatric eater, you can walk around feeling stuffed, genuinely stuffed like that from a meal on only 2/3 of a cup of food per meal, right? That's how much food it takes a skilled bariatric surgery eater to generate that Thanksgiving feeling. And so if you're having 3 meals a day, which is what our patients do, right? If you do the math, you're eating 2/3 of a cup of food times 3 meals. That's on the order of 2 cups of food per day, right? After surgery, 2 cups of food per day let you run around all day going, whew, feeling stuffed. So you only ate 2 cups of food per day. And as you can imagine, if you went all year eating just 2 cups of food or so per day, you're going to lose some weight. And people do. It works quite well, actually. So that is the gastric bypass. That brings me to the second restrictive operation, which is the lap band. The lap band probably needs no introduction. That is the band itself right there. Band is connected by this piece of connector tubing to this fellow down here, which is the filling station, also called the port for short. The band, it sort of looks like it's a white plastic napkin ring looking thing. It's about that big. So what we do with the lap band is we install it right there where you see it around the top of the stomach. And if the band is installed properly, there really is not going to be much stomach above it at all. Just this little tiny walnut-sized pouch. The rest of the stomach's down here. So what happens when this patient eats with their properly installed band? The esophagus up here pushes that bite of their delicious lunch burrito downstream, right, until that bite of food lands in this little pouch over top of the band, where it's got to stop, right? That bite of food has to stop there, or at least it has to pause there, because the forward progress of that bite of food, it is now obstructed by that tight constricting ring. The center channel through this lap band, when it's adjusted right, it's very narrow. It's going to be maybe the width of your pinky, right? Narrow. So this bite of food has to sort of wiggle its way through that band to get down here, past the band into the stomach proper. Once this bite of food gets past the band, from there it sort of goes downstream where food usually goes. But the idea here is that, the important part is what happens while the food is above the band. Right? If someone's eating right, then, hopefully a couple little nibbles of food are sitting in that pouch above the band in a way that's going to distend that pouch and distend and gently stretch the walls of the pouch in a way which will activate those special nerves, right? So if you're eating right with the lap band, those nerves are going to get activated. Your brain will get something like that same feeling of fullness that you were getting with the bypass. And, hopefully you'll end up much more, much more satisfied with less, and you'll eat less, just like with the bypass. So the band, it's the same idea, it's just sort of implemented a little differently. And that brings me to the sleeve, which is the third bariatric operation, sort of the relative newcomer, actually. What we do with the sleeve is we remove part of your stomach. And this piece specifically is the piece that comes out, right? So the piece we leave you with is this piece, which basically starts there, right? This is the end of esophagus. So the stomach starts here, and then the stomach sort of ends there, where it turns into the intestine. It's a little narrow tube of stomach, right? Why do they call it a sleeve? Not exactly sure. I think this operation was started in Brazil, and where they speak Portuguese, of course, and someone thought it looked like a shirt sleeve, and so they called it that, and the name stuck. Maybe it sort of sounds more witty in Portuguese. It's not the best name, in my opinion. But in any case, how does it work? Well, when you eat with the sleeve, the esophagus up there, it pushes a bite of food that you swallow downstream, just like it usually does. When that bite of food lands in the top of your sleeve, it has to stop there temporarily. The forward progress of any bite of food from the top of your sleeve stomach after you get this sleeve surgery, it's no longer really managed by the pumping action of the stomach itself, which is what managed it before surgery, actually. The stomach sort of pumps food downstream at its own pace. But, the part of your stomach that was capable of pumping food is this piece that came out, right? And so after sleeve surgery, the piece we leave you with, it doesn't really move much at all. With the exception of this piece down here at the very end, that piece actually still moves normally. The rest of it doesn't move. So you got this bite of food sitting there. Obviously, it can't sit there forever. How does it go forward? Well, it's a combination of two things. One of them is gravity, right? This is up, right? And gravity, of course, is working on everything that you eat and drink, just like everything else. And it turns out that, and it's pulling them down, right? And it turns out that whatever kind of bariatric operation we're talking about, down, or rather out of the pouch, is down, right? And that's true of the lap band, that is true of the gastric bypass. And that's also true of the sleeve. So gravity is going to be working to pull stuff down and out of the pouch. But much more important than gravity is the effect of the next incoming bite of food, right? Or its pressure from that next incoming bite of food that you swallow. When you're eating lunch, you don't just have one bite of your sandwich, right? You have a series of bites. And even though the stomach doesn't pump after you get a sleeve, the stomach never pumped as strongly as the esophagus does. And the esophagus pumps fine after you get a sleeve, I can assure you. And so that next bite of your lunch that you swallow is going to be pushed in on top of the bite that's already sitting there with quite a bit of power, it turns out, right? And that's going to tend to push that first bite down one position, if you will. It sort of pushes it down one to make room. And then the next bite comes down and pushes those ones down one spot to make room, and so forth and so on. If you watch this happen under X-ray, it looks like these, sort of the bites of food are pushing themselves downstream in basically what looks like single file. Hopefully, while these bites of food are pushing each other down the length of your sleeve, they're also putting enough gentle outward pressure on the walls of the sleeve at the very top to activate those nerves. Remember, that piece at the top is where those tension-sensing nerves are, the nerves that are going to detect fullness. And so if you're eating properly with a sleeve, they're being gently activated in a way that's going to turn those nerves on. And before long, you're going to feel that same, feeling of fullness that you got with a bypass and band and all, which was the one, of course, that you got before surgery, even though you had to eat a lot more food to get it. So it works the same as the other ones, basically. Now, I spend a lot of time explaining that is how these operations work. For a couple of reasons. One is that I think it's very important. It's really sort of the key to understanding to eating. And the other one is that, I spend time on this because it's been my experience that most patients get to me not knowing this yet, right? And the fact that patients didn't generally know this is something that I figured out when I started seeing patients up in New York in 2006. The program that I joined up in New York, the program, it was, I was with Dr. Graber's practice at Paxton St. Luke's, and that, you can, just like anything else, you can Google that these days. That program went on, after I got there, very quickly to become the busiest bariatric surgery program by volume in all of upstate New York. And to be the biggest program in all of New York, period, I should say. We were in upstate, but it was in, and that even includes the city. Because of the city, New York is a very populous state, and there are a lot of very busy bariatric programs there. New York University, Langone, Dr. Garber's program, Columbia, Cornell, etc. Right? And, so we were, it's saying something that we were the busiest of them all. We were very busy. Generally you consider a bariatric surgeon, a full-time bariatric surgeon, decently busy if he's doing 200 cases a year. Well, up in New York, I was doing more than 450 cases a year. And, so we were busy. In the very beginning, though, I wasn't busy. There were probably 2 or 3 months there where during my clinic day, which was an 8-hour clinic day, I would see like 2 or 3 new patients. And so if you do the math, 2 or 3 patients in 8 hours, you realize I was not busy in those clinics. I had a lot of time to kill with the people who came to see me, and I used to spend some of that time quizzing them about their understanding of weight loss surgery, right? I would say, hey, Miss Johnson, do you really understand how this lap band or this gastric bypass that you came here asking about today, helps you lose surgery? And by the way, I didn't forget the sleeve, but no one came asking for that in 2006. But I would say, I know, Miss Johnson, that you saw your friend Frida, lose 100 pounds with the lap band or whatever in that 18 months after she got it. Do you really understand how that happened, right? I mean, what happened that made weight come off? And, what I found was that most of the time Miss Johnson did not really have a good handle on it, right? Now, Miss Johnson, mind you, was coming in pretty excited to be talking about getting surgery because, inevitably, whoever it was I was seeing, they'd already seen somebody do well with it, right? A lot of the time, the person they saw do well was someone that they did not expect to suddenly be so successful losing weight. And most of the time, people coming in did not know up front that it was surgery that made that happen. Because their friend was telling them, it's funny. Their friend was telling them it was not, it was Weight Watchers or something like that. In 2006, weight loss surgery was a lot more in the closet, than it is these days. I mean, people didn't really talk about it as openly. These days, people do. I mean, certainly there are plenty of celebrities that have sort of, that talk about the fact that they have weight loss surgery. But back then, it really wasn't talked about. Even Star Jones was in the closet in 2006. It was patently obvious to weight loss surgeons, by the way, that she'd had, and I figured it was a bypass. But in any case, so, people weren't talking about it, but it was happening, and almost everyone I saw had seen someone do well with it, right? Someone that they did not expect to be suddenly wildly successful with weight loss, and all of a sudden they see him losing all this weight, and in the beginning they're buying the idea that it's Nutrisystem or Weight Watchers, okay. But past the point, it's like, wait a minute, this is not Weight Watchers. What's going on here? And so they find out that, they finally, find out that it's surgery that made this weight loss happen, and now this individual wants to get that thing for themselves. So in as much as coming to sit with me, Dr. Fitzer today is a part of that process, then yes, great, they're happy to be doing it. But like I said, it's a minority of people that had actually invested the time and energy to research it and come up with this thing or come to understand this idea that this satiety reflex business is how the surgery actually works, right? You're eating small amounts of food in a way that lets you feel like they're large amounts of food, right? So that you just feel stuffed and end up choosing to eat less. People didn't understand that, and the average patient came in thinking that after their surgery, they were still going to be able to eat the way they used to eat, right? They thought that they could eat large meals still, but they thought come Saturday night after bowling practice, with the rest of their, bowling buddies, they were able to wander next door to the Chinese food buffet, or whatever it was, and next door, and at least try to make a run at getting their money's worth out of the deal. As you guys can hopefully see and understand now, you can't expect to do that after you get this kind of surgery. That's sort of the starting point in understanding restrictive weight loss surgery. The meals that you eat after these operations, they're tiny. And you need to go into surgery understanding that and expecting it, or you're going to be very unpleasantly surprised. The meals that you eat after weight loss surgery are tiny, and trust me, they're tiny to the point where they're probably going to make the proudest or the smallest meals that you ate on your proudest day of conventional dieting, whatever kind of diet that might have been, Weight Watchers, Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, Slim Fast, those meals are probably going to look pretty generous in retrospect. The meals you eat are tiny, I'm telling you, after weight loss surgery. The difference between the surgery diet, quote, quote, so to speak, and all of those other conventional diets that you almost certainly have tried, Jenny Craig's and all those, the important difference is that with the surgery diet, you don't have to run around starving all day, right? And unfortunately, running around starving all day is something that all of those other conventional diets do require. That is part of conventional diet, starving, basically. You run around hungry, dragging, basically counting the seconds until you're allowed to eat something again. Because your experience is not like that with the surgery diet. And in fact, if you, invest a little time learning how to eat, your experience is exactly the opposite. You run around feeling stuffed, going, whew, from those tiny little meals that you're eating, and not, fighting the urge to eat. Because of that, the surgery diet works, where the conventional ones don't, right? And with this bariatric surgery diet, quote, quote, the average patient is able to lose substantial weight and keep that weight off in the long term because you're not hungry. There's a catch, though. If you really want the surgery diet to work the way it's supposed to work, and by that I mean if you really want to be able to feel Thanksgiving dinner stuffed, like legitimately Thanksgiving dinner stuffed, off this little, 300 calories, 2/3, 3/4 of a cup of food, that doesn't happen all by itself, even with surgery. There are 4 things that you need to be willing to do to make that work. Or there are 4 eating behaviors that you need to be willing to adopt and learn how to make your own. And not only do you need to be willing in principle to learn these eating behaviors, you can't just sort of like endorse them from afar, like I'm the candidate and I endorse this method. You actually have to be willing to invest some energy in it, right? You have to practice. You have to log some hours sitting at the table, practicing some simple exercises that we will give you to get these sort of eating tactics, if you will, these eating habits down. Anyone can do them, by the way. They're not hard, right? If you're willing to spend a little time learning how to make them work, then any of the operations will work quite well for you. In terms of the weight loss expectation, there is a difference in expectation between operations. I'll explain exactly how much of a difference and why a little down the road, but the 4 things that you need to do are the same. That's 5 things. The 4 things that you need to do to make the surgeries work are the same for each. So, thing number 1, starting point number 1 is to get on a schedule where you eat 3 meals a day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's absolutely a best practice of bariatric surgery eating. And after surgery, you want to space meals properly, meaning you want to space meals so that they're about 5 to 5.5 hours apart. We want the meals 5 to 5.5 hours apart. It doesn't have to be precise, but somewhere in there. And the reason that we space them like that is that if you do a meal right after surgery, in other words, if you put the right small amount of food into your pouch the right way, then that 5.5 hours is how long you can expect to feel satisfied. So if your meals are 5 to 5.5 hours apart and you can expect to feel satisfied for about 5 or 5.5 hours, that ought to work out very nicely that you make it from one meal to the next meal still satisfied so that you don't have to, you're not compelled to snack in between. And that's the idea. Each meal you eat after bariatric surgery should keep you full until it is time for you to actually sit down at the table and eat your next scheduled meal. Breakfast should take you to lunch. Lunch, if you do it right, is going to then take you to dinner. Dinner will take you to bedtime, so that you don't have to snack all day. If you find after surgery that that's just not working, you can't make it from one meal to the next meal still satisfied without really fighting the urge to get something else to eat, then you and I would need to sit down in my office and have a chat. And I'm not going to crab at you. What we have to figure out between us is which one of those other eating rules is not working. We're talking about rule number 1, so which one of 2, 3, 4 is not working? One of them isn't working. And the reason that I can sit here and just sound so utterly sure about that is that I know from dealing with thousands and thousands of weight loss surgery patients that if a given patient does those 4 things according to plan, then they very faithfully are going to get that lasting fullness that allows them to get meal to meal without needing a snack. And you'll get that thing too if you do the 4 things. So that's thing number 1. Rule number 1, I should say. 3 meals a day. Rule number 2 is solid food. If you're going to get one of these operations, you need to plan, for the most part, to live on solid foods. Now, it's not like you can never have soup again. You could never have mashed potatoes again. Of course you can, right? However, generally speaking, where there's a choice, you want to try to gravitate towards solid foods. And the reason you want to gravitate towards solid foods is that solid foods are much, much better than those soft, squishy foods at generating for you that full feeling that is the entire point of getting bariatric surgery. Solid foods are much better than soft foods at generating the full feeling, which is the whole point of getting surgery, right? The reason that solid foods are better than soft foods at making that happen is that for each of those 3 meals that I want you to eat during your day, you need that little pouch of yours to stay filled and therefore activated as far as that special nerve signal goes for 45 minutes. That's the magic number, 45 minutes. If the pouch is full for 45 minutes, during that period of time, the signal that nerve is sending your brain is being reinforced, continually reinforced. So at the end of that 45-minute period, that feeling of satisfaction that you will have gotten from that tiny little meal is going to be so strongly reinforced, it's going to feel like Thanksgiving, and it's going to last you the 5 or 5.5 hours that it has to last you to get you to the next meal time without fighting the urge to snack. The only way that tiny little meal that you eat is going to deliver to you that kind of profound large meal satisfaction that you can really make it 5 hours down the road without feeling like you need to snack again, the only way that's going to happen is if that tiny little bit of food sits in your pouch working on that nerve for 45 minutes. The only kind of food that you can put in your pouch that has a chance of being there 45 minutes later, still doing that important job for you, working on that nerve, it's solid stuff. Solids like beef, chicken, fish, bulky vegetables. Solids. Soft, squishy food is going to be long gone. It's 45 minutes. Stuff like soup, cereal and milk, mashed potatoes and gravy, gazpacho, smoothies, whatever, yogurt. Those things are going to be long gone. If you have yogurt for breakfast, for instance, after your bariatric operation, doesn't matter what kind you have, sleeve, band, bypass, in the short term, that yogurt is going to go in your pouch. It's going to fill it up, kind of like it's supposed to, actually. I mean, even yogurt in the short term will fill the pouch up in a way that turns that nerve on. And even yogurt probably will keep that nerve on long enough that your brain starts feeling some satisfaction from it. And so you go, terrific, right? At 7 a.m., you go out in your car and you drive to work. The problem is yogurt is very squishy, and it is not going to be long before gravity carries that yogurt out of the hole, which, of course, is at the bottom of your pouch. And yogurt, mix it with a little saliva, it's twice as squishy, right? So that yogurt is going to go through that hole at the bottom of your pouch, and then your pouch is going to collapse. The nerve is going to turn off. If that nerve has not been working on your brain for 45 minutes, even though you felt full at 7 a.m. walking out the door after eating that yogurt, you definitely aren't making it to lunch at noon before you're going to be hungry again. Come 9 o'clock, you're going to be sitting there at your desk. It's going to occur to you, I passed a tray of donuts in the break room on the way to my desk here this morning, and I bet there's one sitting there right now. There's usually some still there at 9 o'clock. Or maybe you're going to be thinking about the fact that there's some bugles in the snack machine today, and oh hey, I have 75 cents. The point is, you want a snack. You're hungry, and you're thinking about snacking. Now, you don't want to have that snack because you know having it is not going to be consistent with your meeting your weight loss goals, right? That is not something that's going to help you keep your, or make your weight loss goal. So you're fighting the urge to have that snack. Now here's the important thing. Any diet strategy that you have that relies for its success on your successfully overcoming this urge to snack, this urge to act on hunger, that's a losing strategy, right? If your diet requires that you win this fight against having snacks or, eating something when you're hungry, it's gonna fail in the end. The point of bariatric surgery is to give you the ability to get out of that, right? To get yourself out of the position where you're sort of struggling with the urge to have those bugles. And on this particular day, in this office, you didn't need to be in this position. You could easily have gotten out of it just by eating a solid breakfast. You could have had the same number of calories for breakfast, as that Greek yogurt, right? Let's say you ate 300 calories of Greek yogurt. Well, you could have had like a little breakfast sandwich. Picture like a piece of wheat toast, slab of tomato, piece of turkey sausage, and or a fried egg. That's sort of a breakfast sandwich there. Maybe put on another piece of lettuce, for some color. It doesn't add any calories. And that breakfast sandwich is definitely going to be less than 300 calories if you do it right. Much less than that big bowl of Greek yogurt that left you hungry the prior day. But if you'd eaten that solid breakfast, right, come 9 o'clock, you are not going to be dreaming about donuts. You're going to be full. Right? You'll be sitting there at your desk full going, poof. And you're going to see someone walk by with a donut. There goes Fred with a donut. It's got like some powder or maybe some sprinkles or something. And you're going to see him go by, and the thing that is going to go through your head is not, oh man, I hope that's not the last donut. You're going to see that, and you're going to be like, it's going to feel like looking at someone eating a donut when you're kind of sitting there stuffed at the Thanksgiving dinner table, right? After you've eaten 3 helpings of everything. You're not going to, it is not a struggle to resist having that donut or the bugles, right? You get out of that position, you make it to lunch, no problem. Solid food is a big part of making that happen. That's rule number 2, eating solid food. Rule number 3, high-calorie liquids. That's rule number 4. Rule number 3 is liquids around meal times. You don't want to drink around your 3 scheduled meals, right? You don't want to drink for about 10 minutes before you eat, just 10 minutes before you sit down for a meal. You don't want to drink while you eat. That's really the key. That's, drinking while you eat is the cardinal sin of bariatric surgery. You don't want to drink for 20 minutes after, right? So 10 during, 20 minutes after. Why don't you want to drink right before you eat? Well, if you do drink right before you eat, when you sit down at the table, there's going to be some liquid in your pouch, right? Now, most of what you drink right before you eat will dribble away quickly and leave the pouch, quickly, kind of like yogurt does, but not all of it. There's going to be some of it still there, so that now even if you do pick something, you choose to abide rule number 2, solid food, pick something nice and solid to eat like chicken. As soon as that chicken goes down into that pouch, mixes with that liquid that's waiting, now it's cream of chicken, right? It's going to dribble out of the pouch too soon. You're either going to have to replace it then and there, or you can replace it later on when you're hungry before you're supposed to be. So you don't want to drink right before you eat. 10 minutes is probably enough. You definitely don't want to drink while you eat, right? And don't skimp on this one. You don't want to drink while you eat. It's the cardinal sin of bariatric surgery. The reason is that if you drink while you eat after bariatric surgery, you're going to realize pretty quickly that you can eat just as much as you did before surgery. If you drink while you eat after bariatric surgery, it will not be too long before you figure out that you can eat just as much as you did before surgery. And here's how it works, right? Let's say for this example that you had bariatric surgery. It doesn't matter what kind. If it were a bypass or sleeve that you had, your pouch is going to feel like a 4-bite pouch, right? Meaning you can eat 4 sort of standard bites of food at a normal pace before it starts feeling uncomfortable pressure. With a band, it'll feel like a little less in the beginning, but ultimately it often feels like 3 or 4 bites. In any case, you have your bariatric operation. Your pouch is empty because it's lunchtime, you're hungry. You have a tray of some kind of food you like. Let's just say it's chocolate chip cookies, right? Chips Ahoy. You got a 2-liter bottle of something you like to drink. It's Mountain Dew today, okay? empty pouch. So you take one Chips Ahoy cookie. That represents like 2 bites of cookie. Munch, munch. 2 bites of cookie go in your 4-bite volume pouch. So it's half full, right? 2 out of 4 bites. There's room in there for a swig of Mountain Dew. Gulp. Mountain Dew goes down into your pouch, liquefies that Chips Ahoy cookie, washes it right out of the pouch. Pouch is now empty, 0% full. It's ready to go again. Take another Chips Ahoy cookie, 2 bites, munch, munch. 2 bites in the 4-bite pouch, swig of Mountain Dew, gulp, washes it out of the pouch. Chips Ahoy cookie, Mountain Dew, Chips Ahoy, Mountain Dew, Chips Ahoy, Mountain Dew. You get the idea. 30 minutes later, you're looking around. You had 40 Chips Ahoy cookies for lunch, and you also had 2/3 of this 2-liter of Mountain Dew, right? And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, wait a minute, how did I get 40 Chips Ahoy cookies in my 4-bite pouch? That's obviously more than 4 bites. I need to go talk to Dr. Fitzer. You didn't get them in the 4-bite pouch. There were never more than 3 or 4 bites of those cookies in the pouch at any one time. You swished them through the pouch because, you were able to do that because you were drinking so much. Which is precisely why you do not want to drink at meals, right? The object of eating with bariatric surgery is not to find a way to swish as many calories as possible through your little operation there. The object is to find a way to eat where you feel as full as possible from the smallest number of calories. And drinking while you eat is the fastest way to completely, upset that important mechanism of action of the surgery. So you don't want to drink while you eat for that reason. You also don't want to drink for about 20 minutes afterwards, right? You don't want to drink for 20 minutes afterwards. And I actually used to tell people 45 minutes, and a lot of programs still do, and some programs tell people an hour, wait an hour after you eat to drink, which is a tall order. I used to tell people 45 minutes, and I can't speak for other programs, but I'll tell you why I told people that. The reason why I told people that is because I figured, well, part of it was peer pressure, maybe. I mean, most other programs told people something like that, 45 minutes. But the other thing was, I figured I wanted 20 minutes, but if I tell them 45, maybe I'll get 20 minutes out of them. I know. But in any case, I don't tell people 45 minutes anymore. I tell them 20 minutes firm, which is the truth. And I tell people why, right? And you actually can put it together, probably, from what you've learned tonight about how bariatric surgery eating works. All right, and now, for this example, let's say you had your bariatric operation, right? Doesn't matter what kind, band, bypass, sleeve. You had it a year ago, you got to your goal weight. The reason you got to your goal weight is because you became a skilled bariatric eater. You're a skilled bariatric eater because you showed up in my office for coaching, right? You showed up, you understood that it's not intuitive how to eat with one of these operations. You need to be coached into doing it right. And so you showed up, you let us coach you when we gave you practice exercises, you practiced them, so you got your goal weight. And so as a skilled bariatric eater, you like to eat lunch now. You like to start it at the same time every day. And so you're going to start eating at noon. And because you're a skilled eater, you didn't leave the kind of food that was going to meet you at lunchtime to chance, right? You need to eat solid food. It's rule number 2. And so when lunchtime comes, you pull out your little Tupperware and out comes some solid food. There's like a sprig of steamed broccoli. Maybe you saved it from like the Outback Steakhouse. There's like a little bit of rotisserie chicken meat, and there's like a scoop of fried rice. It looks pretty decent on the plate there. It's not really a whole lot of food. It looks okay on the plate, but it's really not much. If you compress that bit of food into a measuring cup, right, it's going to be like 2/3, 3/4 of a cup. In any case, even though it is such a tiny little bit of food, you also know from experience and from our coaching that if you try and eat that food too fast, even though it's a little bit, and before surgery you could just sort of go in 2 minutes, now it's going to take you 25 minutes to eat that food, right? Small bites, chewing, it takes you 25 minutes. You know from experience that if you try and go faster than that, try to wolf it down a little bit, after a surprisingly small amount of food, you start feeling a little pressure right here. And it kind of you try to dry swallow to make it go down. It kind of reminds you of that feeling that you would get today if you tried to eat bread too fast, like maybe with nothing to drink, right? Before long, you got your little pressure there. and maybe you actually have the hiccups. That's what you get with bariatric surgery if you're trying to eat solid food, although you get it with much less, right? So you don't want to fall for that, because you know if you get that pressury, hiccupy feeling, you really want to drink it through. You can't resist it, in fact. So you don't fall for that. You eat slowly. You do not get that pressure. You don't get the hiccups. You start feeling full about 15 minutes in, but you still have some food left, so you keep going. By 25 minutes into this meal, you're done, but whew, man, you're really starting to feel full. So let's think about what's happened at 25 minutes into this meal from the point of view of that special nerve, right? The pouch is very small. Within a couple little bites of that food, when you sit down at the table, within 45 seconds, you put enough food in that pouch that the nerve is turned on and it's working on your brain, trying to build up this lasting feeling of fullness, right? And the whole time you're sitting there patiently eating that little bit of food, that nerve is working on the brain, reinforcing this feeling of fullness. So at 25 minutes in, you're done, right? You get up from the table. So at this point, the pouch has been full, nerve working for 25 minutes, building that feeling of fullness, which is why you're already starting to feel sort of full. But remember, if you're going to get that feeling of fullness that is the really profound next level feeling of fullness, like Thanksgiving, the pouch has to be full, nerve working on your brain for not 25 minutes, but 45 minutes. 45 minutes is the magic number, right? So you're at 25 minutes, you're short. You need another 20 minutes. Where do they come from? Well, when you get up from that table, the pouch is full. There's food in there, activating that nerve. All you have to do is just let that food alone. Just leave it alone, let it continue to sit there, work on that nerve, and deliver your brain this feeling of fullness. Just do nothing, right? Don't drink it out for 20 minutes. If instead you walk over to the water fountain or whatever, the water cooler, you pour yourself a big glass of water, whatever is in that pouch washes out as soon as you drink. Pouch, the nerve turns off. So you got 25 minutes of an activated pouch, not 45 minutes. Now, 25 is it wasn't a total waste of time, right? The fact that you didn't get 45 minutes. 25 minutes will leave you feeling quite full, right? When you get up from that table, you're going to really be feeling full. And that fullness is going to last you a while. You definitely, if you're at 25, if you're eating doing it mostly right, eating solid food for 25 minutes, you're definitely going to lose quite a bit of weight. But you could have done better, right? The problem with just eating for 25 minutes and then just drinking it out of the pouch is that even though you're going to feel full, remember it's 12:30 when you finish lunch, you're not going to make it till dinner time. Dinner time's at 6. Right? You're going to feel full for a while, hours, maybe 4 hours, right? But come 4:30, you're hungry again. And you're driving home, you got your window hanging out of the side of the car because it's nice out, and you pull up to a stoplight, and you're sitting there, and all of a sudden you become aware that you're smelling a delicious salty batch of French fries. And you look over and there's McDonald's right there. Man, do they smell good, right? And you're sitting there thinking to yourself, I could really go for some of those fries now. And look, there's no one in the drive-through line. I could swing in there. I wouldn't even catch a stoplight. I could grab a sack of those fries. I'm not going to make it till dinner. It would tide me over nicely until dinner. No one would know or care. Why don't I just go have some fries? So what's happening here is you put yourself in the position again and you're like calculating, can I do like an extra 30 minutes on the treadmill to offset them? You put yourself in the position where you're fighting the urge to have a snack. You don't want to have those fries because they're gonna hurt your chances of getting to the weight loss goal that you have, and you would rather not eat them, and you're attempting to resist this urge. Remember, the whole point, any diet strategy that you have that puts you in a position where you have to win this fight to succeed, it's a losing strategy. The whole point of the surgery is to get you out of this. This is what the point of the surgery is, to get you out of having to, have this struggle. And on this particular day, you did not need to be having this struggle, right? You could have had the same lunch, right? The same amount of calories, of course, But if you had just held off on drinking for another 20 minutes, you would not be struggling at 4:30, right? You would have had an activated pouch for 45 minutes. Come 4:30, you're going to be sitting there at the same stoplight, same fry smell is going to be buzzing around the car, but you're not going to notice it, right? You're smelling it, but it's not going to trip to your awareness that there's a delicious fry smell and you have to go in and pull in and get some fries right now, because you're just not in that hungry state of mind. That's just the way it works, right? You have to have a certain level of hunger before delicious smells are going to sort of flick your attention. So you just drive right past McDonald's. You get home, it's no problem, right? You make it to dinner before you feel like you need to eat again. So not drinking around the meals or during them is a very important part of that happening. After, you really don't want to drink right before you eat. Of before, during, and after, the before is probably the least important. The most important is during. You definitely don't want to drink while you eat, because if you do, you can eat as much as you want. You don't want to drink, though, for about 20 minutes after, and that one is sort of important. So, rule number 3, probably really the most important rule of all. Do not drink around your meal times. Rule number 4, high-calorie liquids, right? You do not want to, for the most part, you want to avoid high-calorie liquids after you get bariatric surgery, which is sort of common sense. I mean, most people like some kind of high-calorie liquid. Certainly I do. They're in my refrigerator. There's usually something in there. And in most people's fridge, there's some combination of milk, juice, soda, ice cream, protein shakes, sweet tea, Red Bull, lemonade, juicy juice, Budweiser, caramel macchiato from Starbucks. I mean, that's not going to be in your refrigerator, but you might drink it. I will not tell you not to drink those things. You can. You can drink any of them in moderation, though, and, you need to you can't drink them all the time, the bottom line, right? When you're hydrating throughout the day as you go, on a day-to-day basis, you need to be hydrating with water primarily, or something else with 0 calories, right? You save up those other things and have them as you space them out. You have them as an intermittent treat. Save it up and have a few on the weekend, right? And that's true even of coffee and of alcohol, right? There's no medical reason why in moderation you can't have those things after any kind of bariatric surgery. But you can't just live on those things all day long, because if you do, they all have the same problem, too many calories. Even skim milk has that problem. Some people believe that skim milk is for dieters, but that's not the case. It is not something you should drink if you're trying to lose weight. The problem with skim milk, people think it's appropriate because it doesn't have any fat. Well, the same can be said about regular Mountain Dew, right? But a little glass of regular soda and a little glass of skim milk, they both are going to have close to 100 calories, which is a huge lot, compared to what most of us should be taking in per day, right? Contrary to what you can read on the internet still in many places, the average relatively inactive, sedentary 30, 40, 50-year-old human being, we don't need 2,000, 2,400 calories per day, not if we want to be near our ideal body weight. The guy who can expect to be his ideal body weight on 2,400 calories a day is a 25-year-old Marine recruit down at Camp Lejeune in basic training, right? He spends his day on 10-kilometer runs and the obstacle course with the 40-foot wall, the rope wall, and all that stuff. That's the guy who can rely, who can definitely plan to be his ideal weight on 2,400 calories. For most of us, we don't live like that. For better or for worse, we spend most of our time in front of the computer like this, on the couch or behind the wheel. And the real number of calories that we can expect to bring into our body, if that's what our day is like, and have a chance of being, in the same zip code as our ideal weight, I can promise you it's much closer to 1,000 than it is 2,000, 2,400. Very easy to get 1,000 calories per day from what you're drinking if you're not paying attention. A little milk and orange juice for breakfast, soda or two during the day, maybe like during your commute or break time. Throw in one latte from Starbucks or Tim Hortons and poof, you're probably well over 1,000 already. You've not even had your first pistachio nut, right? Your first little tiny dibble of solid food, your first wasabi pea. if you keep drinking like that after you get one of these operations, it definitely is going to hurt the odds that you are going to get to the weight loss goal that you probably have for yourself. So high-calorie liquids, you definitely can have them. Save them up, though, and have a few on the weekend, have them as a treat. You can't drink them all day long. So that's the 4 things that you need to do to be, in the broad strokes anyways, being successful with weight loss surgery. One thing I want to say here about how the surgery works before I move on, and it's about how the bypass works, and I need to say this because there's quite a bit of confusion on the subject. The way that the gastric bypass works or helps people lose weight, it's really one way, and that way turns out to be the same way as the band and also the sleeve, right? And that way is by making people feel more satisfied with less food so that they just choose to eat less. What I've been talking about. A lot of people believe that the bypass works another way, right? Or it partly works another way, or maybe even mostly works another way. And the way that they think it works is, the additional way is by making it so you don't absorb calories from the stuff that you're eating and drinking. They think it's malabsorptive. That's really not the case, right? Now, there's a kernel of truth to that. There's a little bit of malabsorption of vitamins and minerals with the bypass. It's really pretty modest, but as far as calories, it's trivial, right? It does not contribute meaningfully to how much weight you lose. You drink 100 calories of milk after a bypass, or you eat 100 calories of Cheerios, body absorbs 100 calories, or close enough anyways to 100 that you can't tell the difference. The way that like I said, the way the surgery helps people lose weight, it's the same way as the band and the sleeve. It's the same way by making you feel more satisfied with less, so that you just end up choosing to eat less. So if you can do the 4 things that I just described with average attention, then you can end up, or that you will probably see average weight loss, which turns out to be pretty decent, and you see it here. Average excess weight loss with the bypass is 70%, sleeve 60% of the excess weight, lap band 45%. I'll explain why there's a difference in a second. If you're not familiar with this term excess weight or excess weight loss, those are expressions that bariatric professionals use to compare how our folks are doing. If you want to figure out what your total, what your excess weight is, so you can understand what it would mean if you did lose 70, 60, 45%, what you do, take your weight today, whatever the scale said this morning, right? Subtract from today's weight your ideal body weight. And that gives you your excess weight. Now, your ideal body weight is a number. It's got a specific definition for this calculation. It comes from the 1983 Metropolitan Life Insurance Table by convention, which, in 2015, if you Google it, you can have it in 5 seconds. You don't need that table, though, to do the calculation. If you want to sort of guesstimate your ideal weight pretty accurately, just picture what a trim 17-year-old who is your height and your sex, what they would weigh. Trim 17-year-olds, right? And so take today's weight, subtract that trim 17-year-old's weight, and the number that's left over is your total excess weight, which is mostly fat, right? So 70% of this number, the average bypass patient loses, 60% sleeve, 45% lap band. It's important to understand that the numbers that you see here, the percent of the weight that people lose with these operations, that's the average number. Some people do better than average, some people do worse. There's sort of a spread around the average, just like there is with every other measurement in nature. There's one of those bell curves, and there's people over here that do better than average, people here that do worse. The average is right at the top of the bell. So, for instance, with a gastric bypass, it's 70%, right? So, as far as doing better or worse than average, in my experience, people don't really care about doing worse than average. They want to know, what's going on over here. How do I do better than average? And what I can tell you about doing better than average is that up in New York, I calculated that, I did a lot of patients up there, and I saw a lot of patients in follow-up. And I calculated that for about every 8.5 bypass patients that I saw in follow-up, 8.5 patients who were 1, 2, 3, 5, multiple years out after surgery, I would see for every 8.5 one patient that lost 95% of their extra weight. And you have to understand, so in other words, that's someone who lost 25% more weight than average. Pretty good. And if you see someone who lost 95% of their excess weight, you have to understand they look, excuse me one second. Yeah, you see someone who lost 95% of their excess weight, they look very good, right? I mean, they look quite fit. In clothes, you can't really tell them from someone who's their ideal body weight. And, people would see a 95%er, as I call them, sitting out in my waiting room, and it wasn't, it was not uncommon for someone to come in and ask me about them later when it was their turn, right? They'd say, hey, Dr. Fitzer, the chick out there in the red dress, is that a weight loss surgery patient? Or is that like a rep of some kind or something? And I would be like, yeah, yes, that's a weight loss surgery patient. In my mind, red dress is not a HIPAA, a protected identifier. So in any case, I mean, everyone knew it was a weight loss surgery office. So, if someone found out it's a weight loss surgery patient, then the next question, of course, is, what gives? I mean, how did they get that exceptionally good weight loss? Everyone pretty much had the same guesses. The number one guess, of course, was exercise, right? Obviously that gal out there does cardio, right? She does like 3 hours of cardio 8 days a week. I wish I had time to do that. It's not exercise. I can tell you that as a group, the 95%ers, they don't exercise more than average. And it's not metabolism, which usually was guess number 2. They just, obviously that person is blessed with a fast metabolism. Isn't that nice for them? I wish I had that. Well, their metabolism is not fast. And that's not the answer. All these 95%ers, just like everybody else in the very recent past, they were morbidly obese. And in many cases, extremely morbidly obese. The thing that the 95%ers do to get that exceptionally good weight loss, if you want to know, it's always the same thing. And what that is they pay exceptionally close attention to the eating rules, right? They have learned how to do the central trick of bariatric surgery, basically, which is to be able to sit down at the table with a small amount of solid food, right? Add 25 minutes of careful eating, and poof, you turn that small amount of food into poof. It feels like 3,000 calories. It feels like a 3,000 calorie meal, and you got that from that little tiny 25 or 250, 300 calories of food. That's the central trick of bariatric surgery, is to learn how to be able to do that, right? And they learned that by coming to our office, letting us coach them, practicing the exercises we give them, over that very important first year after surgery where these things have to be learned. They can do that, and at will. They can sit down at the table with 250 calories of food and get up going, whew, feeling like Thanksgiving. That's a 95%er. For every 95%er I have after surgery, of course, I have a 45%er, right? Or in other words, I got someone who lost 25% less weight than average for everyone who lost 25% more. If I didn't have one of these guys over here, then the average would move this direction, and it doesn't. It stays right here because I did have a 45%er. And again, the difference between the 45%er and the 95%er and the 70%er, for that matter, it is not exercise, it is not, it's not metabolism, it's attention to the eating rules, right? As far as the 45%ers, up in New York, we had our own little 2-story office building, and my office was on the 2nd floor, and my window overlooked the parking lot, so I always knew whose car was whose from, looking out the window or from, walking back and forth across that parking lot to the hospital, which was next door. And I came to discover that if a patient of mine showed up, 1, 2, multiple years out after surgery, like a male patient, for instance, if I sat down with him and I could not figure out within like 5 minutes where his the 4 rules, where his eating behaviors were going wrong, right? If I walked out, and I know then, if I walk out in that parking lot and look in the window of his car, there's going to be a milkshake in the cup holder right there, and some regular soda bottles over there, usually, and most of the times, some various other kinds of bariatric contraband. And likewise, on at least 3 occasions I can think of, I was in my office sitting with a female patient of mine who was, multiple years out after surgery and who only had 45% excess weight loss. And I sat with them and I could not get a bead on what was going wrong with their 4 eating rules, right? Or at least with the way they're doing a bariatric meal, it sounds right. And yet they have this terrible weight loss, and they want to do better, and so I'm trying to troubleshoot it. And on at least 3 occasions that I can think of in this setting, I'm not making any headway. I challenge the patient, hey, we got a mystery here. Why don't we take a peek in your purse and see if it doesn't shine some light on this mystery? And don't get the idea that I do this every time. I don't. And also, you got to understand, these are patients I've known for years. Every one of these patients at this point, there are people that I literally have known for years, and you'll just have to take my word for it when I tell you that in these 3 instances, I'm pretty sure it was just 3, that I can think of, it was sort of appropriate, and I'll submit as evidence of that no one sort of crowned me with their, smoked me with their purse and ran out the door. Everyone was like, all right, and they, sort of blushingly opened the purse. But I can also tell you that in every single one, there was at least a partial answer in there, right? Sometimes a complete answer. In every case, there was some stuff, bullseyes, Hershey's Kisses, Kit Kats. In one case, it was a bag of M&Ms that really, honestly, pretty much took up the whole purse, right? And it was like a big Costco bag. So my point in discussing this is to make the point that no surgeon who offers these operations is ever going to guarantee any would-be patient that is interested in one that the operation they get is definitely going to make them lose even the average weight loss, right? We can't guarantee even the average weight loss. The thing that we will vouch for is these operations give every single patient pretty much the exact same ability to feel Thanksgiving dinner stuffed on a tiny little bit of food, right? 300 calories of food. If they eat that 300 calories of food according to the general method of eating that we have just broadly outlined. That is what the surgery will do. And so if a given patient is willing to eat that way, faithfully, right, most of the time, then they'll have very good weight loss. If a patient is willing to eat a proper bariatric meal, even 9 out of 10 times, if they're willing to do a proper meal 9 out of 10 times, they'll do fantastically, right? I have no doubt someone who eats a proper meal, 25 minutes at the table, solid food, 9 out of 10 times, will be a 95%er if they got a gastric bypass. And they're going to get that weight loss without having to go hungry at all, right? And that's an important point. It's really the central point of bariatric surgery, so I'll say it one more time. When you get weight loss surgery, what you're doing essentially is you're making a trade, right? You're trading from one model of dieting, the model that you've done your whole life, conventional dieting, you're trading from that into a different kind of dieting, whole different model, bariatric surgery dieting. And it's important in one key respect, right? So the nature of this trade, it's important to understand. The problem with conventional dieting is that if you're going to succeed with it in the long term, you have to be able to do something that human beings can't do, right? That's impossible for pretty much everybody. And that impossible thing is that you are going to have pretty, essentially perfect control over your urge to act on hunger. That's what you have to succeed with a conventional diet in the long term. You have to have mastery over your urge to act on your hunger. If you lose and you will be hungry, right? If you lose the kind of weight that you get with weight loss surgery, right? You lose that with a conventional diet. You lose 100 pounds, 70% of your extra weight. For most people, it's like 100 pounds. You lose that with Weight Watchers or Slim Fast or Nutrisystem, you will be hungry, right? And so your job, if you're going to keep that weight off from then, henceforth, is to just, resist the urge to do something about that hunger, right? To decline, delicious food when it shows up. And so I'll paint a picture for you. Let's say you do lose 100 pounds with a conventional diet of your choice, Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, whatever. You understandably will feel good about how you look if you lose that 100 pounds. And, you may well want to, kind of show off your hard work. And so this winter, you want to vacation in Florida, right? You maybe have some relatives down there as an excuse, but then you get to sort of walk around in shorts and, a good-looking T-shirt or something, and just generally sort of enjoy sort of feeling fit and looking good. And more power to you. Why not? And so somehow you persuade your spouse to do it, and it's settled, and so you're going to drive. And so you, spouse, kids, get in the car. You're going to drive down to Orlando, and you're going to drive on I-95. And because you're smart, you're not going to just try and drive overnight in one pop and save the hotel fee. That's dangerous. So you spend the night, you break it into two legs. In the morning, you're going to get up and eat breakfast before you get on the road again, and you probably are going to eat breakfast at Cracker Barrel because it's pretty much unavoidable if you're driving down I-95 to eat there at least a few times. Although maybe you somehow do avoid Cracker Barrel and you go to Denny's or something, IHOP. So in any case, you're sitting there at the breakfast table. And you're pretty hungry, right? I mean, if you lose 100 pounds on a conventional diet, you will be hungry. And you will wake up with kind of a little touch of that kind of low blood sugar fogginess, feeling a little grouchy and irritable, truth be told. And maybe you have a bit of that sort of unsettled stomach that you get when you've been dieting really hard. You know what I'm talking about. And so you're sitting there at the breakfast table, and, and there's spouse and kids, and they have all kinds of normal, delicious breakfast food. Cheese omelets, doughy smelling waffles that smell delicious, bacon, eggs, the works, right? All kinds of delicious stuff. And in front of you, however, there is a scoop of fat-free cottage cheese in a little fruit cup, right? And you're sitting there, again, and you are hungry, feeling a little grouchy, and kind of foggy-headed. You eat your cheese in your fruit cup. It does not put a dent in this feeling. And now spouse and kids get up, they're done or half done, there's so much food, they eat a third of it. And they go to the bathroom, right? And you're going to pay the check while they're there. And you're sitting there, feeling kind of, again, that cheese did not put a dent in this grouchy kind of hypoglycemic irritability, and your stomach still doesn't feel right. And you're sitting there staring at that cheese omelet, and you're just thinking to yourself, I could just have a few bites of that and maybe a couple of those sausage links. It would fix this kind of low blood sugar, crummy feeling that I have. My mood would completely, the whole character of the day would change if I just had a little bit of that food. It would fix this. And it also was, I know from experience, it'll fix the sour stomach, like turning off a switch. And when I walk out the door, it'll be a whole different day. The sun will be shining brighter, Why don't I just have some of that? No one would know or care, You can't do that. If you're going to keep that weight off with your conventional diet, you have to just turn your back on it. You got to sit there like the Dalai Lama, and just sign that check, walk out the door. And the problem is that it's not just in that moment that you have to do it. You have to keep it up, right? All day long. A couple hours later, you're going to be stopping to get gas. You're going to be sitting there just trying to pay at the checkout, and the other attendant's going to put down this sheet of fresh, dripping, steaming hot Krispy Kreme donuts straight off the conveyor belt. And you have to run away, and at lunch, they're going to want to eat at Five Guys burgers, right? And then at dinner, it's going to be somewhere else, something delicious that you have to refuse. For the rest of the trip, for the rest of the year, forever, till the day you die, all day long, you're going to be called on to refuse to eat delicious food that you want to eat, that's available, that everyone would be happy if you ate, and, you're just going to have to do that constantly. Good mood, bad mood, stressed out, whatever. And the problem is people can't do that. Human beings stink at that, honestly. I mean, and the fact is we should. I mean, we were not designed by nature to do that, to resist the urge to eat when we were hungry. On the contrary, we were designed by nature to feel extremely good about satisfying hunger when it shows up. It's really a survival instinct. Human beings evolved on a planet, just like every other animal that's scuttling around out there on claws or hooves, we evolved on a planet that's got winter. And on a planet that has winter, it turns out that the animals that do not inherit a powerful instinct to fill up when there's food around, right, when there's fruit under the tree in the summer, those animals aren't going to be there next spring because they're going to starve in the winter, right? So the animals that have persisted over the aeons on Earth, they're ones that do have a very developed instinct to fill up when there is food available. And, human beings have it. And it turns out that, and we're just learning this about obesity, that impulse to act on hunger, it's strong enough as it is, but when you spend some time obese, it gets amplified, right? When you spend a little bit of time above a certain weight, depends a little bit on your genes and your age, it's probably a body mass index somewhere 30 to 35, your body undergoes some chemical and hormonal changes that amplify hunger. And it becomes a trap, right? Hunger is stronger, and so once you pass this certain event horizon, a certain threshold, it's like you're sucked up. You're never going to diet down to normalcy again, or the odds are almost zero. Doesn't matter how you got above that weight, there's different reasons. Maybe you broke both legs and were laid up for 6 months in a skiing accident. You gained too much weight in pregnancy. Some people they had a bad breakup or something and they gained a bunch of weight. Or some people, a lot of people lose weight in that setting. Some people gain weight, and some people work their way through college, the night shift at the Krispy Kreme donut factory. It doesn't matter how you got the weight on, once it's there, it's a trap. And the likelihood of you dieting down to normalcy again, it's quite close to zero, right? And it's not, that's not just my opinion, my pessimistic opinion about conventional dieting, that the likelihood of it's working for an obese patient in the long term is near zero. I mean, one might stop and think, we might be a little suspicious that, hey, that is what a bariatric surgeon would say, that bariatric surgery is the only thing that works. But it's not, the fact is we're not in the dark about what a patient's odds are of beating beating obesity without surgery, right? Few things, in fact, have been as carefully studied. There is tons of medical evidence on it, We've studied, we've been aware forever that obesity is a dangerous disease, and we've studied it the same exact way we approach studying other diseases, right? Leukemia, diabetes, lymphoma, pretty much everything else. Heart disease, right? And when we're trying to figure out, what is an effective treatment, we evaluate it with carefully controlled clinical trials, right? And, every conventional diet, I can assure you, has been looked at. There are thousands of clinical trials for dieting, careful, high-quality clinical trials in many, many cases that have been run, and you can look at them. They're, abstracts, in many cases, full text is available on the NIH database. And if you spend an afternoon looking at them, you'll see that there have been clinical trials for pretty much every possible permutation of diet with diet adjunct, which is a thing we can think of that might make a diet work better, including medicines, hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, frequent follow-up, group therapy, psychotherapy, blah, blah, blah. And, if you look at them, if you spend an afternoon studying them, or a few afternoons, you will notice a couple of common threads. One is that there are a host of conventional diets out there that help patients lose modest amounts of weight. Now, the conventional diets do not help people lose the kind of weight that you get with surgery, right? It's usually in sort of the 5 to 15% range, but that's something. But the other thing that you'll see if you study those clinical trials is that the studies that follow dieters out beyond, about 3 years past the start of the diet, 3 years is the magic number. The studies that follow people beyond about 3 years, in those studies, the long-term studies, almost everybody by 3 years is heavier than when they started. Like 3 years. And with very, very rare exception, like less than 2%. And it's, it's because of this hunger phenomenon, right? People ultimately succumb to it. So, and it's funny, and I'll just editorialize one little bit here. There certainly are people who make a lot of money marketing weight loss cures on the premise that they have the cure that doctors are desperate that you don't find out about, right? The cure that the doctors are trying to hide from you. Most people are smart enough to realize that is absurd. But I can prove it. Doctors are definitely not the medical establishment. At least the powerful part of the medical establishment wants obesity to go away. And doctors are not the powerful part. The powerful part is the insurance part, the insurance companies, which are the entities for whom all of us doctors work, essentially, right? And I can assure you that if any conventional diet had ever proven to work better than any other conventional diet, or at all, every insurance company would demand that that you have all your patients on that diet, right? Or they'd fire you. You wouldn't be able to be on their insurance panel. The fact that no insurance company does really, do that, or in fact put any emphasis on any kind of diet at all, is, it really sort of speaks to the state of, what the literature has said, the studies have shown about conventional dieting. It simply doesn't work. So when you get weight loss surgery, it does work, and it works because you don't have to worry about this. To succeed with weight loss surgery, the surgery diet, you don't have to be able to beat hunger, right? Your success with a surgery diet does not depend at all on your ability to resist hunger when it shows up, which is a big change. It's a big one. If you sort of let that sink in and think about that later, it takes a minute to absorb that. So you don't have to have any ability at all to successfully refuse hunger to be successful with surgery. But it's not like you're completely off the hook. It's not like there's no work to do. There is work to do, but it's possible work instead of impossible work, right? And as simply stated as I can put it, the possible work that you have to do, to which you have traded when you got surgery, instead of having to find the ability to refuse hunger when it shows up, you have to find the ability instead to resist the urge to blow off the inconvenience of doing a proper bariatric meal. You have to find the ability within yourself to resist your urge to blow off the inconvenience of doing one of these proper meals. Remember, a proper bariatric meal is where a bariatric patient takes a small amount of solid food, 3/4 of a cup, it's like maybe 300 calories there, and you're going to carefully eat it in a way where, poof, it turns into 4,000 calories of satisfaction, right? The kind of satisfaction that you would get, for instance, if you spent 40 minutes eating at the Chinese food buffet. 4,000 calories of Chinese food. General Tso's chicken, shrimp lo mein, chicken kung pao, sweet and sour pork, etc. After 5 trips, huge helpings of Chinese food, you're stuffed. Sitting there at the table, you don't want to see Chinese food, right? And you're getting ready to try and shove off from the table and leave, and all of a sudden your friend there goes, hey, I got this egg roll, it's untouched, we can't take it with us obviously, why don't you just finish this off? And you're sitting there looking at it. Now, you love Chinese food, but in that moment, can you decline that egg roll when you're sitting there feeling that stuffed? Yes, you can. You're like, ugh, the thought of eating another egg roll at that moment feels vaguely nauseating to you. So that's the trick, right? You did that, remember, with 250, 300 calories of food. And you sat down hungry, ate 250 calories of food, and now you're looking at an egg roll like, before surgery, what's 250 calories? It's like a yogurt. You would just, you would definitely be happy to accept that delicious egg roll, 250 calories in, but now you're like, oh, the thought is kind of grossing you out. So that's the trick. If you've done it right, not only in that moment can you decline that delicious food, it's going to last you also another 5 hours. You can get 5 hours out the road, running the gauntlet of delicious other food coming your way, so you can get it and arrive at your next meal table to sit down and then do the trick again, right? So that's the trick. That's the whole point of bariatric surgery. The problem with this trick is not that it's hard to learn. It is not hard to learn. Anyone can do it, okay? It's not hard to learn how to feel so stuffed with this little bit of food. It's not it. The problem is that it's inconvenient. And the inconvenience, past the point, has no remedy, right? You just have to accept it. And so you spend a year, we've spent a year, I should say, training you in all the nuances of bariatric eating and what exactly it means in terms of, inconvenient, what's inconvenient about it. But I'll give you the big one right now. The big inconvenience is that it takes 25 minutes to do this trick, right? You want to sit down at the meal, or rather at the table after surgery with a little bit of solid food and get up really feeling like Thanksgiving dinner stuffed. You better have 25 minutes because that's how long it takes, right? And it's funny, I used to do this talk in the office one at a time, and I would give it to patients, and eventually I sort of realized that this thing was going on where, patients figure out, either consciously or unconsciously, that dieting advice given to them by doctors ultimately does not pan out. It doesn't work. It's really worthless, right? And oftentimes it's unconscious. And I would start talking about this, and I could tell with time that, I'm doing this, and people just would kind of dismiss it. They'd hear like some incoming diet advice, and a part of their brain would just sort of stop paying attention and put it on the pay no mind list. And I eventually, I had to interrogate someone to figure this out, but eventually I could see it happening, with just their reaction, maybe the question they asked after I give this little bit, or sometimes just their expression. But I'm here to tell you that it is one of the most important thing that I've said all night, right? Is it takes 25 minutes to do this trick. And you can take that to the bank. It is an important reality about bariatric surgery. So what does that mean? It means you need to be someone who is willing to sit at the table for 25 minutes when you eat. You need to be comfortable with that. And it's not that you just need to be willing to sit at the table 25 minutes when you eat occasionally. I mean, regularly. Bang, bang, bang. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that's a big change for a lot of people. A lot of people do not sit at the table at all, and if they do, it's 5 minutes or something. And it's also amazing, it can be hard to change. I mean, it's funny, sometimes the amount of kind of road ragey impatience that will, develop in a patient of mine, the first time they try to sit down at the table and do this, it can be quite amazing. But I'm here to tell you that, however road ragey you feel the first time, you can learn how to do it, right? And we will help you. And I submit to you that not only can you learn to do it, but you can learn to do it and feel good about it and come to value that time you're sitting there at the table for those 25 minutes is one of the most important times of your day that you won't miss. But it takes work, right? But that's the kind of work. And so rolling back around to the difference in terms of your work before and after surgery, right? So let's say you get bariatric surgery, you're a year out, you get to your goal weight, and you are a skilled bariatric eater, right? And because you're skilled, you like to start your meals at the same time, and you've arranged your day so you start eating at 7 a.m. before work. By 7:25, you give yourself 25 minutes. 7:25, you're done. You got 5 minutes to put the plate in the sink, brush your teeth, and get in the car. So on this particular day, you're eating breakfast at 7:15. 15 minutes in, you're already starting to feel sort of full. But you're sitting there eating in the way we showed you. You know you got 10 minutes more, and all of a sudden, distraction presents itself. Bling! Across the room, your computer screen turns on. You got an important Facebook posting, right? Or maybe your iPad sitting there pops it up. Facebook posting from someone you haven't heard from in a long time. Or maybe it's like a text or whatever. It's a distraction. All of a sudden you think to yourself, hey, I'm already feeling full. I got 10 minutes left before I got to go get in the car. I think I'd rather spend this last 10 minutes diddling around on Facebook instead of just finishing this meal. I mean, I'm already feeling full. What the heck? In that moment is the critical difference between your work before and after surgery, a crystallized difference, right? When you are sitting there contemplating whether you're going to blow off the rest of this bariatric meal, the last 10 minutes, to check Facebook, that's just a choice. It's just a choice, and you have a chance with that one, right? There's not 2 billion years of evolutionary Darwinian biology, forcing you to check your Facebook. It's just simply a choice. And you have a chance with that one in a way that you did not have a chance back when you were sitting there at the Cracker Barrel feeling hypoglycemic, starving at the table, right? Hunger is not a choice in any meaningful sense. It is much more deeply biological, right? Hunger is deep in our DNA. I mean, amoebas, one-celled organisms exhibit hunger behavior. You deprive an amoeba's little water drop of food particles, it will act hungry. You really don't have a chance with that one. At any given second you do, but averaged over time you definitely do not. You don't have a choice. But with Facebook is a choice, okay? And you can learn to put that one off for 10 minutes is the bottom line. It may take a little work, but you can do it. You can learn it in a way that you can't learn to just ignore hunger. And so that's the bottom line. We'll help you with that. That's the kind of work if you want to do well with surgery. Every day when you get up after your operation, right, you will, I'm talking 1 year, 5 years, 20 years after surgery. When you get up and you're going through your day, you are going to be confronted by this little string of very familiar decision points. And at each one of those little decision points, you are going to have the option to do the simple thing well known to you, to generate for yourself 5 hours of, with that tiny little bit of food. You're also going to have the option to blow that off today because I'm just too busy, right? I don't have 25 minutes this morning to eat breakfast. I'm not going to have 25 minutes for lunch. And, it's just not going to work this week. I'm too busy. And, and next week is going to be really busy too, so I don't want to say that I'm going to do it and then not do it again. Next month, I'll get back into the 25-minute meal thing for real. Next month, things should have simmered down, so I should have time. Next month, I'll get back on the wagon. You see, you see the nature of the work. The nature of the work is just to cultivate the right attitude about doing these proper things now, today, this meal, every time. And it's doable work. I want you to come to look at doing a proper bariatric meal the way you look at putting on your shoes, right? What I mean by that is, you're never going to go to work without your shoes. You're down eating breakfast, fiddling around on your iPad at the kitchen table, eating breakfast, fiddling, and all of a sudden you realize you got so into it that, man, I should have been in the car 3 minutes ago. And you're sitting there in socks, feet under the kitchen table. How many times have you decided, man, I'm so late, I can't go upstairs and get my shoes, I have to go to the office in socks today? It doesn't happen. You will go get your shoes, even if you're walking in before you realize it. You'll drive home and get them. And, you can come to think about your doing a proper bariatric meal in the exact same way. It's just simply something that has to happen that you do, and that's it. It just requires a little slight shift, but we'll help you with that. So anyways, there's a difference, home stretch here. There's a difference in terms of weight loss, and it looks like for some reason I'm taking a little more time than usual. And so I'll give you the quick version and why there's a difference. Two things. One of the reasons there's a difference, one operation to the next, is hormonal changes, and that's something I haven't mentioned yet. The bypass and the sleeve offer you one other advantage as far as losing weight that the lap band doesn't, and that is hormonal changes. It turns out that when we cut your stomach the way that we have to do a sleeve and also a gastric bypass, we change the way with those operations that the stomach releases hormones into your system. Ordinarily, our stomachs and intestines are releasing hormones into our systems all day long, especially in response to food. And the hormones have different effects, right? Now, most of us have never heard of these hormones because unless you're in certain advanced, sort of graduate biology fields, you probably, they're going to have no meaning to you. But they have different effects, and one of the important effects is on appetite. And the bottom line is that because of the change in the release of these hormones after bypass and sleeve, everybody has a drop in their appetite pretty much at all points during the day. It's variable, the effect that people get, but pretty much everyone gets some effect, right? You can think of hunger and appetite as existing anyways on a spectrum, right? On one end of the spectrum, you got the really hungry end. The other end, you got the anorexic end, right? On the really hungry ends, people over here, hungrier than average, think about food 10 times more than average. Most of the people who come to see me for surgery, maybe they're not all the way over here. They're somewhere on this side of the spectrum. On this side of the spectrum, people don't think about food, don't care about food. They're usually real skinny, This is the anorexic side, right? They're not frankly, anorexic, like, or bulimic, like throwing up or something. They're not starving themselves, on purpose. They just don't care about food. They're just not eating. They just have no appetite. So that's the spectrum. Because of the hormone changes you get with bypass or sleeve, all the people who start here, when they get surgery, they move some distance in this direction. Some people go all the way, right? It's very dramatic. They go to sleep here. A couple months later, when the dust settles, they realize they went all the way over here. So this person wakes up and they realize, hey, I'm just never really hungry anymore, nowhere near like I ever was before surgery. Even when I'm not putting food in my pouch, the way that Dr. Fitzer was talking about, it's not hungry. And also, this person doesn't think about food anymore, right? Before surgery, this person, food was the central preoccupation of their waking mind. After surgery, they just thought of food just never pops in there. You sit at them with a table and tell them to just get your attention, say something when a food-related thought pops in, and you're just sitting there for 15 minutes. And they're like, it just doesn't happen. They're free of that. And that obviously gives this person a big boost when it comes to losing weight for obvious reasons. Not everyone gets this profound effect, the complete effect, but if you do, you're fortunate, right? That's one end of the spectrum. Some people don't get much effect at all, even after bypass or sleep. They go to sleep over here. When the dust settles, they realize that on the spectrum, they went like this, beep. So this person wakes up. They're still on this side of things. The person wakes up and they're like, hey, if I'm not putting food in my pouch the way that Dr. Fitzer was explaining, I'm hungry pretty much like before surgery. Now, this person can still get great weight loss, mind you, but they need to be able to pay attention to what hands and mouth are doing for 25 minutes at a time, 3 times a day, right? So this person has to do that. This person kind of gets out of that a little bit, to be honest. So most people, though, they don't stay all the way over here on the spectrum. They don't go all the way over here. They do move noticeably. They go like this. And they end up here in what you could think of as the normal zone, right? Remember that bell curve? So they started at hungry over here, and they didn't go all the way over here, but they ended up here, right? They have sort of a normalized level of appetite, normalized level of food-related thought, and so they just, it's very helpful, when it comes to sticking with a diet and losing weight. You don't get that with the lap band. We don't cut the stomach. We do not cut the intestine. To install the lap band, and that not cutting business confers a minor advantage when it comes to certain infectious problems, at least early on. But you don't, get this hormonal piece, and it is something that people miss. It's not like a nothing effect. So another reason there's a difference in terms of weight loss is that the band, it's a bit, it's trickier to learn how to do the trick, right? If you want to be able to sit down at the table with a little bit of solid food and eat it in a way where you get up feeling just stuffed, it's just a little bit more complicated with the band. It takes more practice, and I could spend that's an essay question. I could spend hours explaining that, and I do, but not But suffice it now to just say that for now that it's just trickier with the band. It just takes more coaching, more practice. The follow-up is different one operation to the next. That's something that's important to understand. Actually, follow-up with the bypass and sleeve, it's the same in my office. If you get a bypass or sleeve, you lose most of the weight that you're going to lose in a year, although a little bit more probably will come off maybe to like 18 months, but most of it's in the first year. During the first year, I will see you in the office 4 times. I want to see you at 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. After that, I'll see you annually. Things we do at those visits are a couple things. One of them is vitamins. We talk about your vitamins. We make sure you're taking the right stuff. I'd like people to take regular vitamins. We check your vitamin levels to make sure they're okay. If you're taking your vitamins, they almost without fail will be okay. We talk about your diet. We make sure that you are coming along or progressing in your understanding of how to do that trick, right? And I give you exercises from time to time. Those are the main things. And we'll talk about whatever else you want to talk about. With lap band, there's more follow-up, right? Even though you lose a little less weight, it takes a little longer. Usually takes at least 2 years to sort of level out and hit your plateau weight with a band. Sometimes 3 years. During those first 2 or 3 years, I want to see you in the office more. Especially in the beginning, I'd like to see you every month, like every 4 weeks, right? I wouldn't space it out more than every 6 weeks. It sounds like a lot of visits, but it's not just me being a pain. It's quite well demonstrated. There's plenty of evidence, anyways, that with the band, the more people follow up, the better they do in terms of losing weight and avoiding complications. So I would like to see you every 4 weeks, and people hear that and they're like, "Geez, that's a lot of visits. What are we doing at all those visits?" Well, some of the things are the same. One of them is vitamins. Getting the lap band does not get you off the hook of taking vitamins, right? It's still the standard recommendation of the ASMBS, American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, which is sort of the important society in this question. They really sort of have the best, or at least I should say the best researched guidelines. The guideline on vitamins is a good one. So, band patients, they are not off the hook. They're eating less if they're doing the band diet right, and that does put them at risk of vitamin deficiencies. Getting the band doesn't get you out of that. And by the way, not getting surgery does not exempt you from taking vitamins. Deficiencies are rampant in patients, even obese patients, without bariatric surgery. And, so in general, I think people should warm up to the idea of vitamins. Some people are just very averse to taking them. So we talk about that. We talk about diet, and we spend more time talking about diet. This is really what we spend most of the time talking about if you have a lap band. Why does it need so much talking, so much discussion? Well, it's trickier, right? It's a trickier thing to learn, and it just takes more expert coaching. So we talk about that. With the band, we add one other set job, right? And that's adjusting. The band's adjustable. We need to determine if you need that adjustment. If the band's going to work right for you, it has to be just tight enough. Can't be too tight, can't be too loose. I'll ask you a set of questions when you come in the door to figure out exactly where you stand on that tight-loose spectrum. Depending on how you answer, you'll need that adjustment. And the way I do it is I find your filling station there. It's under the skin. I have to sort of feel around for it. It's not like flapping in the breeze the way it looks in the picture. When I find it, I sterilize the skin over top of it, and I stick a little needle in. If you need to be tightened, I add a little saline solution to the system. If you need to be loosened, I take it out. So how often do you need the adjustment? Not every time. Probably not even half the time, right? Just under that. So if you're coming in maybe 10 times a year, it's like 4 or 5 adjustments a year probably in the beginning. Ultimately, you'll need them less, right? With time, you probably maybe like once a year that you need them. But you have to understand that you never completely give up the need to have the thing adjusted occasionally. It's not like one day Dr. Fitzer's going to just get lucky and find your band's happy place. It never needs to be adjusted again. It doesn't work that way. If it slowly weeps fluid, and if you don't replace it periodically to the tune of at least, once or twice a year typically, it's going to lose enough where you notice it, right? The weight starts coming back, the appetite starts coming back. And so, if you're going to get a lap band, you really need to be willing to commit to adjusting it at least periodically for life. Or, seeing someone who can manage it for you indefinitely. So anyways, let's throw in the towel there. That's what you can expect in terms of weight loss and follow-up. And hopefully I did not tell you anything too terribly, hopefully I did not tell you anything too terribly unexpected. And with that, let's take some questions.